people. But first they were built by Hagar Nashashibi.
1864.
1864. It's quite amazing. I mean, there was definitely nothing outside. Guys, come up.
That was Muslim.
Thank you. كيف عليك؟
Okay, so what brought Mr. Hagar Nashashibi to build a house in the wilderness of Jerusalem? There's nothing here. And you can tell by the size and the wealth of the house that he was not poor. It wasn't like the Jews who had to leave the old city because they could not own any property inside and they were poor and it was bad. We can assume by looking at these two houses, the Nashashibi, the very wealthy family, that they didn't have to go out. So what you guys are looking at is a very interesting phenomena that was not just in Jerusalem, but actually all around the old Arab cities. I don't know about outside the country, but definitely in Palestine. And that was what they called casa, which means a palace, but meant villa. Many wealthy families inside cities, like I would say Nablus or Nazareth or Jerusalem, that had a lot of money, but then living in a very packed city. So during the summer, they would want to go out, so have some fresh air, and they would have enough money to build a villa outside. Now, most of the year, the villa would not be housed by anybody. I mean, it would be usually there would be a guard who would live in the house with his family, keeping it for the owners. He would take care of the garden. It could be an orchard or something around. But the family itself would still be living inside the city. Now, since Muslims and Christians lived in the old city along the northern wall, right? Try to remember where these two borders are. So naturally, when they build their villas, their casa, in outside the walls, it would be up to the north. So we're these houses, the nashashibi houses, were the most west, the westmost neighborhood out of all the other houses, villas that were built by Muslims and Christians, Arabs in general, outside the walls. And that's how slowly but surely you had these new neighborhoods created, not as a plan, not like the Jewish neighborhoods as let's all go together, build a courtyard with the houses together, but one villa here, one villa there, etc., etc. And then that's how Baba Zahira outside the Herod Gate was built and developed. That's how Sheikh Jarrah was, the Husseini neighborhood, Masoudia, Musrara, and same here. So I'm pointing this out because when we're looking at these houses, very impressive houses until today, what I'm saying is that when you look at the motivation for the different people to go out the walls in Jerusalem in the 19th century, you can see that it's completely different between Jews and Arabs. Jews left in the old city because they couldn't stay there. They couldn't live in the old city anymore, and they were very poor. They moved out and they needed the support, either money or the community help. They went together to build one united community living in a neighborhood. Unlike the Arabs who just built these villas with qusur outside, and then slowly but surely you saw this. So basically it looked different. Lots of beautiful villas, and the community was not a community. So for example, here it was because Nashashibi built this house, and then his cousin said, you know what, I like it here, I'm going to build myself also a house here. And then another cousin came and he built up there, and that's how eventually he had the...
That means they own the land.
Everyone, whoever bought something outside had to buy the land, obviously. So here it was just a private purchase. I mean, this family bought this land, built their house.
Nashashibi, so it means they bought more.
Yeah, eventually they got a neighborhood. Okay, so I'm saying this is important because if we're looking for, I'm talking about the expansion of Jerusalem out of the walls, you can separate Jewish neighborhoods and Arab neighborhoods. First of all, by these, they were poor, they were rich. Their motivation to go out was because they wanted to have fun outside, and they were forced. They had to. The environment, I mean, the neighborhood would look very, we're going to see it in Nachlaot in about an hour, how every Jewish neighborhood would be very small, surrounding a little courtyard, all community thing. Here, just villas spread around the mountains. And geographically, most of the Jewish neighborhoods were built west to the old city, unlike the Arab neighborhoods, which most of them were built to the north. Okay, there are some exceptionals, but this is how things would look like until World War I. Right? Later on, during the British Mandate period, things will change. The Jewish neighborhoods will look different. Many Arabs will move to live in the western side, in Katamon, in Talbiya, and other places. But this is the vicinity of Jerusalem during the 19th century. Okay, so this house, Haga Rashida and Nashashibi, became very famous later after the family sold the house to a very interesting man. I'm talking about the 80s, right? Like 25 years after they built the house, they sold it to a very interesting guy named Moses Wilhelm Shapira. Now, Moses Wilhelm sounds not so Jewish, but Shapira, come on, Shapira is definitely a Jewish name. You're looking at a converted Jew to Christianity who lived here in Jerusalem, and if you ask where did he get the money to buy such a gorgeous house from the nashashibi, it's because he had the most successful archaeology store in the old city. He had a huge store in the Christian Quarter where he sold stuff, real stuff, archaeology, artifacts that were found all around the country. And since he paid the best amount of money to mostly the Bedouins who would find it, they would come to him first. So all the cool stuff, the best stuff, was in his store. And since we're talking about days back then, 19th century, Europe was crazy about archaeology and crazy about diggings and excavations in general. He made so much money out of it that he had enough money to buy this house for his wife and 2 daughters. So we're talking about a Christian family with a converted Jew living here, having a lot of fun, and everything was really great. If you ask me what was the highlight of his career, that was a very interesting Salim, icons like these that were found in Moab, on the other side of the Jordan. He sold dozens of these. They're about half a meter high. I saw one in the and since he, as I said before, he paid so well to those who found this stuff, that's why he was the only one who managed to do most of his money out of it. But you know what? If you're really asking me what was the highlight of his career, this is not even it. In beginning 1885 or 6, I'm not sure, he was the first person on earth probably who offered to sell one of the famous Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, the Dead Sea Scrolls, we are familiar with them, right? We've even seen them in the museum. But I want to remind you that the scroll that we're familiar with were found in the middle of the 20th century, right? Remember Sukenik, right? The archaeologist, the Israeli archaeologist Sukenik, went to buy all the scrolls from the Bedouins in the 50s. But here I'm telling you about somebody who held, it's just one, but one is very impressive, one scroll of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it was so impressive, and everybody wanted it. So it turned out that he asked no less than 1,000,000 lira sterling.
How much? Sorry? How much?
Pounds. That's
How much?
1 million pounds for this thing. Now it was clear that no private person would be able to buy it. It was the British Museum who was interested, and Moses Shapira went there to London, and everybody was so impressed with it. And just a second before they signed the check, they said, you know what, this is a lot of money. Let's look for an expert who can make sure that this is real. And they've called a French scholar named Charles Clermont-Ganneau. You might have heard of him. He was a very important guy in Jerusalem. There is actually a street named after him in Bab Zahira. And I'm telling you, this was really hard for the British to call up a French expert, but then they wanted to make sure that they're not just throwing their money away, right? So Charles Clermont-Ganneau came over, took a short look at the scroll, and said that it was fake. Fake. And I told him, how do you know it's fake? So he said, come on, look at the stitches. I mean, it's scrolls, right? It's how do you say? Forget. Parchments. It was like a few pieces of parchments, and they needed to be sewed together. Look at this very modern square stitch. Come on, if he tries to trick you and lie to you,